Hey there, what's going on, you guys? I'm Mad, and I cover and talk about pretty much everything from smartphones to cameras. I also really like hats. Anyway, I wanted to talk about how picking up a Fuji camera made me a better photographer. I know it might sound kind of like weird or clickbaity, but there really is an element of truth and realism. Like when I tell somebody that, I mean that. I truly became a better photographer after I started picking up and shooting with Fuji cameras. So now, just to preface this and to quickly show you guys where I had started, in terms of Fuji right now, I currently have and am shooting with primarily a XH2, and this thing is an absolute beast. I love it. 16 to 80 f4 that I bought it with is a full frame equivalent of 24 to 120, which is a incredible focal range in my opinion. But this camera overall is just such a beast in itself. So this is what I am currently shooting with in the Fuji category. Now, if you guys don't already know, I do shoot with many different camera systems. I basically shoot with 5 different brands generally: Sony, Canon, Nikon, Fuji, and Panasonic. And I generally keep 1 or 2 bodies of each manufacturer around to kind of keep tabs on what that brand is offering in the camera market, and also just so I can get a full scope of the camera market in general. Like if I want to be an expert on these things, you know, everything smartphones to cameras, I should buy and try and experience pretty much everything. But yeah, anyway, I do shoot and video with the big 3, Sony, Canon, and Nikon, and I also am shooting this video on a Lumix S1R2, which this thing is amazing. It's my baby. But I've been picking up and putting down different cameras for about half a decade now, and there's quirks and positives and negatives to each brand that you come across. I mean, even each camera body is just different and unique. And what is insanely interesting to me is how Fujifilm itself is such a well-known brand. And of course they did produce their own film elements, but they also produce their own bodies and lenses. And there are things about Fuji cameras that just are so different that are just so non-mainstream compared to like Sony's, for example. Sony's are probably the most mainstream that you can go, and it's for good reason. The autofocus is pretty much unparalleled. They offer a lot of different products on the market, but Fujifilm has pretty much been known to have like a cult following, and it's interesting because they comparatively own very little of the market share, of the camera market share. And so basically how this kind of got started off was I made the decision to make a jump into Fujifilm by picking up a Fujifilm camera, and I had to make a choice. What was going to be the first Fuji camera that I picked up? And Fuji actually has a pretty extensive, albeit confusing, lineup, but what I ended up picking up was a Fuji X100-6. And if you're not familiar with the X100 line, it's kind of like the most popularized camera right now. Some people might call it the TikTok camera, or just kind of the camera that you can point and shoot and get that organic, filmic, sometimes retro style and different looks out of it. So that is the camera. MSRP on it is it's supposed to be like $1,600, but tariffs and whatnot, it got raised up, and I paid too much for it, but I was able to get my hands on it. It was an excellent and amazing camera, and I got to get a feel for the ergonomics and how Fuji cameras were set up and how they act and behave in the menu systems and whatnot. But also I thought I was doing myself a favor because the X100-6 has a non-interchangeable lens mount. It has a fixed lens on it, which I believe, if memory serves, it's like a 23 mil, so 35 in full frame equivalent terms, which is kind of the focal length I think I would want to go with if I had a prime lens. But it really forced me to kind of start looking at prime lenses differently also. Anyway, I thought I was doing myself the favor of getting myself a non-interchangeable camera. That way I could spare myself from the burden of having to pick up another lens mount system, and I wouldn't have to start buying Fuji lenses and whatnot. So I ended up going with that. I pulled the trigger on it. Exceptional camera. I used it for about a month or so. I ended up not keeping it, and I really have nothing bad to say about that camera. I mean, just honestly, the IBIS system in it is fantastic, especially considering the size of it. The retro styling looks great. You know, I'm not a huge fan of like the retro throwback camera design, but you know, I'll admit it does look good. Anyway, but yeah, everything from the really good IBIS that was new to the X100 compared to the 5s and down, the 40 megapixel APS-C sensor, that is the highest megapixel sensor that you can get on APS-C. It's an amazing sensor. It produces beautiful, beautiful images. And I also realized that, you know, part of what makes the X100 lineup so good as well is that built-in Fuji glass. That prime glass being able to beautifully resolve that 40 megapixels, it really gave me an appreciation for Fuji glass. Anyway, I sent it back. Fast forward a little bit, I ended up deciding to pick up an XH2 because honestly, it cost me, it was about the same price as what I paid for the X100 so that's just kind of how inflated the prices are right now. But you know, this has the biggest grip out of any Fuji camera system. Some people like that, some people don't. But I do have to say, I am disappointed by this lens in particular, the 16-80. It is exceptionally soft. It cannot resolve the 40 megapixels of the, this has the same sensor the X100 has. It's the same 40 megapixel sensor. This glass, unfortunately, is just too soft. And it's just not up for the job. I thought at first I got a, you know, possibly a bad copy of it, but after some researching online, on Reddit and internet forums, it seems like the general consensus of it is these lenses are just soft in general, which is unfortunate because it still has a fantastic focal range, and I do shoot photos with it, and I still also do shoot a lot of video with it. It's actually still great for video. With this 8K 40 megapixel sensor in it, it's not up for it. So that was unfortunate to find that out. Overall, I don't wish I got like a different model or whatever. I dug all into the Fuji ecosystem. I thought about picking up an XS20. I thought about the XT series. Thought about picking up an XT50, and the XE5 came out, which is just an X100 but with interchangeable glass and a few other slight changes. And you know what? I really didn't even have too bad of a learning curve when it came to picking up and learning the Fuji body. Some things about them make a lot of sense, other things not so much, but once you start diving into the menu system, it's really not that bad. I mean, this is coming from a guy who had to learn the menu system of pretty much all the other brands as well, but this one I just didn't find too hard to pick up. But, you know, of course, it is a left side columnized menu setup, and you guys can see the IQ right here that stands for image quality. So up here you can go through all of your image quality settings: autofocus, manual focus, photo settings, flash settings, video settings, and then setup, and then network. And then you have a my menu if you want to use it also. But aside from that, the menu system is fairly straightforward. I do like that the middle button is just the menu button is just the middle button. I do like that. Your Q menu is your quick functions, and then you just have a back button, auto exposure lock, AF on button, drive/delete, and then preview. And then if you picked up a few Fuji cameras already, you'll typically find that usually left on the D-pad will be it will get you into your menu for the different film simulations. So you can see you have like Provia, Velvia, Astia, Nostalgic Negative is one of my favorites. You know, it's all quickly and easily accessible. I also really love the viewfinder on this guy. It is an excellent viewfinder. Very large and comfortable to use. It's crisp and clear. You can change the settings of it in the menu system as well. But, you know, why I went through all of that is the camera itself is set up to be very deliberate with how you shoot, and it really is like two different styles of shooting. Like, as a quick example, professionals like wedding photographers, wildlife, they're gonna want something like a Canon or Sony, or even like one of the newer Nikons now, to where it has an incredibly fast autofocusing system that can keep up with the shutter rates. And that's just not like the culture of Fuji cameras. Now, they can do all that stuff, they can, but you have to get to know the camera, learn how to set up the autofocusing system, and there's going to be some trial and error involved. But I would argue for the payoff for a lot of it is worth it. But taking a look at the culture of a lot of Fuji shooters and what I've seen through YouTube videos and various places is the difference between like a Fuji shooter and like a Sony shooter is somebody who, like, let's say is like they've got their Fuji camera and they want to get set up for shooting a landscape, like some mountains, whatever. They will put it on a tripod, or they will just take a moment to level it off and lock in all of their different settings, their ISO, their shutter speed, their f-stop. Everything is intentional to a fault with Fuji cameras. I've noticed more photographers that are on Fuji shooting manual. That's what it seems like from what I've seen. Fuji shooters generally it seems prefer manual camera settings, which is totally fine. Everybody should at least learn how to shoot fully manual, but compare that to somebody who, like, let's say is more run and gun and needs to be able to trust the automatic capabilities in their camera system. They might want to go something like a Sony body, to where they can set it in aperture priority, and as long as the aperture is good, they know that the camera will do the rest and it will do a beautiful job. Same with shutter priority or whatever mode. It's just less things that you have to think about. But with Fuji photographers, it seems like, you have to be able to have the enjoyment of thinking about every aspect of the photo that you're going to take. And what I've noticed is usually they'll just take one photo and they'll be like, okay, I got it, I'm good. Compared to somebody with like a Sony or a Canon or whatever, they'll shoot like half a dozen or a dozen just to make sure that they got the shot, compared to having totally manual setup, manual settings, and just getting everything dialed in for that moment of click. And you're like, okay, that was perfect. And Fuji bodies kind of intentionally or maybe unintentionally teach that methodic manual embrace or like way of thinking for it. And I do want to say one thing. It is partially because this thing is slow compared to all the rest of them. Not in terms of like shutter speed, but in terms of like turning on and turning off, and when it goes to sleep, just like waking it back up. It's much slower when it comes to that kind of stuff. That's not important on Fuji cameras comparatively. Whereas like with the Sony camera, as soon as you turn it on, it's on and ready. And going through the UI, going through the menu system and everything, it's meant and designed to be able to be used as fast as possible, as fast as you can use it pretty much. Whereas on the Fuji system, it's really not that much slower, but the buttons definitely take more to press, and the like navigating by joystick, for example, I feel like takes more effort. And there's just kind of just some things in general where it's like you have to really make sure that when you're using the joystick that you move it all the way down or to the side. Like if you use it, like if you act like it's more sensitive than it is, it won't work every time. So it feels slower because you have to make sure that you really crank it down or to the side or wherever. But other than that, just little things like the buttons are hard to push comparatively just to other cameras, and just the way it's set up, you can tell it's not really like speed isn't the main prerogative, really. Oh, and the other thing is when it times out and the screen goes dark, you have to really you have to press and hold the shutter button. Like nothing else will really wake it up. If you hit the menu button or any of these, none of it will wake it up. Only if you hold the shutter button all the way down, and it feels like it takes like a good second or so. So it's just things like that. Like this one, comparatively to other Fujis on startup, is pretty good, but things like that where so it just went black, you can see right here, none of this is turning it back on. Only if I And like you have to really press it too, not like halfway, but all the way down. You have to press it all the way down and hold it. Maybe that's just how Fujis are. Maybe that's how they've always been, and I just don't know. It's just something that I'm not used to. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just things like that I've noticed. But the main takeaway that I've had from kind of picking up and using these Fuji cameras, I would say it seems like a lot of them you can do standard focal length, you can do a 1.4 times crop, and you can do a 2 times crop. And I didn't realize how kind of genius that was until I was using the X106 on the 40 megapixel sensor. It really made me kind of think of primes like in a different light, or it had me put more thought into them. But here's what I'm rocking right now as far as my mobile camera setup. So this is the one I currently take with me pretty much anywhere. For the longest time I have put zooms on them, but now lately I've just been sticking a prime on it. Anyway, on the X100 series, it has that 23 millimeter lens, which we talked about, which again is a 35 mil and 35 millimeter full frame focal length. So starting off at 40 megapixels, you have a 35 mil field of view, right? And then on the 1.4 times crop mode, which on those you can just activate with a lever, it crops into about a 50 millimeter focal length. That focal length right there is another staple of one of the most popular focal lengths. And then if you were to kick it all the way over to the 2 times crop, well then you're at 70 millimeters. So in this small, and I'm talking very small, 35 millimeter piece of prime glass, you are able to effectively squeeze out the 35 millimeter focal length, a 50 millimeter focal length, and a 70 millimeter focal length, albeit with crops, but I'm sure they do optimization internally for when it's in that crop mode. All cameras do it. And I have to say, even at that 50 millimeter crop and the 70 millimeter crop, the photos still come out looking stunning. There's just plenty more than enough resolution to walk away with fantastic images at that 70 millimeter focal length. So there's definitely a true beauty in this. And it gave me another reason to just not underestimate good glass. Good glass will take your images so much farther than a lot of other things. So basically, to circle back around to my point, because I made the choice to start picking up and shooting with Fujifilm cameras, it really significantly changed the way that I move and operate as far as what choices I make for the daily camera that I take with me. So again, here's an example of an implementation of that thought process using prime glass along with crops. So this is a 20 millimeter f2.8 Viltrox lens. I've got a black mist filter on it, but other than that, that's it. It's a small, compact, and sharp piece of prime glass. And the best part about it, I paid under $200 for this lens. So this is an insane value. But when it comes to talking about unlocking the power of this lens, I used to think, okay, you got a 20 millimeter lens, and then if you want to kick it over to Super 35 or APS-C, you got a 30 mil lens, which 30 mil is great too. But 20 is wide enough to where, you can still get some excellent selfie shots. It's wide, but not like distortedly wide. But yeah, I just think it's a great focal length. So we can kick it from 20 mil to 30 mil, just like that. This is a 33 megapixel sensor. It bends down to 14 megapixels. The images still look fantastic. They still look way sharp. Trust me on that. And it's even better if you have something like an A7CR, which a lot of people don't know. That 61 megapixel sensor in the A7CR is believed to be the same in the Leica Q3. Yeah. Seriously. So again, having that many megapixels to play around with and the in-camera focal length optimization, the results are just still so good. You bin a 61 megapixel sensor down, you get 26 megapixel still images. So that's from full frame to Super 35. But that doesn't mean that it has to be the limit of it. So I like shooting a lot of video on this camera. It shoots amazing video, especially for the size that it is. But on the latest firmware update, Sony added the dynamic active image stabilization for it. It is freaking amazing. But when it comes to video versatility, I can go from 20 millimeters on the standard IBIS, about 24 millimeters on the active mode, to about 35 millimeters on dynamic active mode. That's a lot of really great focal lengths to be able to play with in video modes. And that's not even going into the fact that this can also do clear image zoom and then regular digital zoom on top of that. So yeah, focusing on those couple just little different points allows me to get some really good different focal lengths out of a very small, light, compact, sharp piece of prime glass. Just because of that alone, I'm glad that I started picking up and shooting with Fujifilm cameras. They taught me to be more intentional with the photos I take, and also the true versatility of using prime lenses. I mean, using any lens really, but primarily the versatility of primes. Hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you in the next video.